Officials in 50 states have launched a joint investigation into allegations that mortgage companies mishandled documents in foreclosing on hundreds of thousands of homeowners, including many right here in Delaware. What safeguards would you favor to make sure laws are not broken and that homeowners are treated fairly? To you, Ms. O'Donnell.
That's an excellent question, and I know that personally. The foreclosure crisis has skyrocketed and paperwork has gotten shuffled and nobody knows what to do. First of all, we need to get back to a time before the Democratic policies that forced banks to give people who could not afford a mortgage. So that's part of the regulation that he talked about. But he forgets that it was the Democrats who forced those policies through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac that made people who could not afford mortgages have to get mortgages. Now, that's what caused a lot of the collapse. We need to regulate that, put in certain regulations. One thing that's been talked about is making sure there's a certain amount of a down payment. I don't think that that's fair, and that's something that's coming from Republicans, because sometimes you can afford a mortgage payment and you can't afford a certain percentage of a down payment. So we need to look at the overall history, the overall economic history of the lender, and make sure that it's fair to the person who's exercised responsible behavior to get a mortgage.
Good, thank you. Mr. Coons, your reply?
To answer the question, I support the efforts of our Attorney General and many Attorneys General to make sure that the foreclosure process is fair, is appropriate, and is following the legal rules. There are so many families facing foreclosure that I'm pressing. I'm seriously discussing the possibility of a mortgage moratorium for a month that would allow states and communities to look hard at their processes. The mortgage foreclosure process is different in almost every state. It's complicated, it's heavily legally driven. In some cases it's judicial, in some cases it's administrative, but we need to show compassion for the 3,000 families in Delaware excuse me, that are facing foreclosure, and we need to show a better understanding of the whole process by which mortgages are being extended. My opponent suggests that Democrats somehow forced banks to give mortgages to families who are unable to pay them. That's just flatly untrue. There were poor decisions. There was poor oversight by both Democrat and Republican administrations and folks in Congress in terms of the mortgage lending rules. And there's been significant progress in restoring balance, sanity, and transparency to the mortgage market, but there's more to be done.
So for our follow-up here, would you also support a moratorium on foreclosures?
Absolutely, to make sure that the process gets sorted out, because there are a lot of mistakes being made. I think that nobody has ever seen the amount of foreclosures, and there's a backlog of paperwork and things are being pushed through, rules are being broken. It's tragic what's going on, and a lot of Delaware families are suffering, and I know that firsthand, and we've got to do something to help the families. But one of the things we also have to keep in mind is we need real economic policies to get our country back on track. Specifically, what a lot of voters in Delaware face are these big tax increases in January, but also the death tax. The death tax is about to expire on January 1st, and one of the things I've been talking about since the spring is to permanently eliminate the death tax. Now, one of us will be serving this November in the lame duck session. I'm proposing this November to stop the death tax from being reinstated on January 1st. I met someone who told me that their grandfather has a terminal illness and is literally praying to die before January 1st because they don't want to see their family have to sell the business, possibly have their home go into foreclosure just because they're going to face a 55% death tax. If we stop that, it'll immediately create 1.5 million jobs.
All right, just to split the time evenly, what would you like to add?
I'm sorry, I was having difficulty focusing given that long story. Forgive me. I think there are important changes we need to make in the mortgage marketplace and to ensure that we've got a strong, transparent, and robust market. But I am concerned about the possible impact of a moratorium because we do need to make progress. We need to move houses back to ownership. In Newcastle County, we've got an innovative program that's trying to make sure that homes that have been abandoned or vacant for a long period because they've been foreclosed on or are facing foreclosure and their owners have left are responsibly managed in the interim, because they can have a real and negative impact on all the other properties around them, losing their property value, bringing down the neighborhood. We are working quickly and positively, in part through something called the Neighborhood Stabilization Program, a good and effective federal program, to make sure that we get qualified homeowners back into homes that have been foreclosed on and are vacant. There's good initiatives like this we can and should take to make sure that while we take a brief break to ensure that the process is being followed right, we are also getting our economy back on track.